It's a Wednesday and we're back with another episode of the podcast. Thank you again for listening, liking, subscribing, and commenting and following. Oh my God, it's so many things. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, which is about casual fucking racism. Can you believe it? I'm sure you can. I hope you enjoy. Hello, it's me, Julie Kim. Welcome to Bothered, my little podcast about being bothered. Every week I share short stories.
Living like this, I might lose it.
They're mostly real situations that have happened to me. You wouldn't believe some of them. Or maybe you would. Maybe you can relate.
Living like this, I might lose it.
It really feels like we live in such a racially charged world, especially these days with everything going on globally. And so this week's episode is about a particular incident that I had a while back when I lived in Toronto and I was working in corporate jobs. I'll get right into it. So I was living kind of close to downtown and I was in a grocery store. I did happen to be in a line that was for like 6 items or less. I had 7 items, but 2 of them were apples. And I still maintain that I think if you have 2 of the same item and it's the same SKU, that it counts as 1 item. I don't think it would be the same if it's like you have 70 items and like 65 of them are apples and the rest are individual items. It doesn't quite like scale like that. But anyways, I had 6 distinct items, 7 total items. I was in this line and I hear a huffing from behind me, and it was a man. I had glanced and it was a man. Not being a fan of passive aggressiveness, I turned around to see who it was. And I said, "What was that there?" I do this every time, by the way. I still to this day do this kind of thing. And my husband shrinks in embarrassment and the disinclination to be in some sort of conflict. I, however, tend to lean into it depending on where I am. If I'm like somewhere with guns, reminder that I am Canadian, I act a little bit differently. But at this time in this grocery store in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, I turned around to ask this gentleman what he was huffing about, knowing full well it was about me. And I said, "What did you say?" And he said, "You have more than 6 items." And I said, like, whatever, because I had 7 items, but 2 of them are apples. And I kind of was like, whatever. And he said next, this escalated very quickly. He said, "Whatever, go back to China." This is where I remind myself and everybody else that I am in fact not from China. I am in fact not from anywhere other than Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where I was born. I turned around to see who had just said this very witty comeback of "go back to China." And it was a man who was with his friend who was in a wheelchair. The wheelchair guy was just this man in a wheelchair who actually had all of the groceries that they were purchasing together on his lap. Instead of getting a cart, they just put it all on this guy's lap, hopefully with consent. But the guy who had said it to me was standing. He was a very, very tanned, middle-aged man in a tank top who kind of looked like Walton Goggins, who I really like and who, of course, lots of people like. I mean, a lot of people know and like him from White Lotus season 3, but I really liked him from the Righteous Gemstones, which, you know, when I meet someone who really likes the Righteous Gemstones, I think we have the same sense of humor. You are weird and funny and we're cool. But this guy looked like a middle-aged guy with a tan that was like too tanned to be real and a tank top. And he didn't look like he was like going somewhere that would require a tank top, like to a amateur volleyball game or something like that. It was just guy in a tank top in a grocery store. I mean, I know enough to know that if I'm going to go to a grocery store and spend any amount of time in it, that it's going to be cold and I bring a sweater. But this was just a guy who was in a tank top at a grocery store at Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto. Anyways, again, he said, "Go back to China." And that escalated pretty quickly, as I said, because I hadn't even really said anything or done anything to warrant this kind of thing. And I said, "What did you say?" And he said, "I am a gay man," which had nothing to do with it. The lady between us in line was a well put together, professional looking black lady. And she was having like none of this. Like she didn't want to be there. And I looked to her just for validation to be like, did you just hear that? Did this just happen? I was looking for any bit of validation. Like, did that just happen? That's fucked up, right? But this lady just looked like whatever about it. And she said to me, yeah, this happens all the time. Like, I'm just used to it, which itself made me really sad because I think aside from childhood experiences of like racist little kids or just ignorant little kids being like, go back to China, or chink, which I had been called a lot in childhood, had not had an actual adult interaction where someone so quickly and in such an unhinged way retaliated in a non big deal situation, just go back to China. So I think I just left it. I think I was kind of in shock. And what I did was just leave the grocery store. But I remember this feeling of feeling frozen inside. I was able to walk outside of the grocery store, but I was so overwhelmingly in this situation and obsessed and unable to think of anything else. And I stood outside the grocery store watching this man and his friend in a wheelchair leave. And the only natural reaction that I had, even though it was super uncomfortable, was to follow them. And they went into an electronics store in the same like sort of mall area. And I didn't even know what I was going to say or do, but I went in there. And by the time I got in there, they were in line at that store, not berating anybody in front of them for the number of items that they had or did not have. And I went up to this man, and at the time it took a lot of bravery. Like that's how I felt. And I remember I was like shaking it. And there was no part of me that was like scared of this man in a tank top and fake tan. But I went up and I said, like, that was racist. You're a racist. He said, I am not a racist. I said, you told me to go back to China. I'm not even Chinese. And he said, I'm not racist. He goes, I have traveled the world. That was the second non-response that he gave me. I've traveled the world. And I said, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? And the man in the wheelchair said, I really apologize for my friend. We're in a stressful situation. Like, I've been slowing us down all day in this wheelchair. And I don't have any more context than that, except that the man in the wheelchair was trying to make excuses for his friend being stressed out and sort of explaining that his racist comment was just a manifestation of him being very stressed out for the day, which we all know is a bullshit fucking response. If you're racist, you're racist. And if it takes something for it to come out, fine, but it doesn't mean that you're not fucking racist. So I think I just left it at that. I think I left it and I said, you're fucking racist. And I went home. And I'm sorry that this story is a little bit funny, but more sad right now. It's going to get a little bit more sad, and then it's going to get angry, and then I'm going to come back and it's going to be funny again. So I'm going to touch on his two weird comments that he seemed to explain his own behavior. The first thing is that he pronounced that he was a gay man. I don't see what that has to do with anything. I have no issue with him being gay. I think what he was trying to do was let me know that he too was from a somewhat marginalized population. And sometimes when somebody is from one marginalized or underserved or underprivileged population, they think that absolves them of any guilt from discriminating against another. I didn't sit on that with him, but I also think it's quite a bullshit response. I don't go around being racist or sexist or otherwise an asshole to anybody else and say, I'm a straight Asian woman, like as in I deserve to give you some shit too. I deserve to be ignorant to you because I have received ignorance. Or maybe it's a way of saying I empathize with what it's like. So go back to your own country. That doesn't even fucking make sense. Also, again, a reminder that I am not at all from China. But I do love Chinese food, and I wonder if this man does. I also feel like a lot of people have talked about this lately, but if you're going to be sexist at all, you're not fucking allowed to eat our foods. Anyways, the other thing that he mentioned was that he has traveled all over the world. So now he is saying, yes, I told you to go back to China, but I have traveled all over the world, and I will have you know that I'm not ignorant in the way that I just sounded. Because I have traveled all over the world and I can't possibly be racist because I have been to all these different countries. And let me just say that just because you go to another country doesn't mean that you're not ignorant. You could be going to those other countries specifically to exploit young Asian boys. I have traveled the world. So when I say go back to China, it's because I know it's a great place. Maybe he was trying to tell me he was doing me a favor. I should go to China. I would love to go to China one day. And then maybe I'll go again because I liked it so much. In which case, that is the only time to properly say, go back to China because I've been there at all. And I'll tell you something that happened so what happened after is that I went home with my groceries and I put them on the counter. I closed the door and I started crying. I didn't know that this was going to happen. Even a second before it was going to happen, I didn't know. I think I had just built up so much tension in my mind and my body, and my emotions were on such high alert that just involuntarily I started crying. And I started crying in the most sobbiest, uncontrollable way. I was alone, thank God. It was like probably the ugliest ugly cry that I ever cried, actually. And I just let it out for 2 or 3 minutes, just heaving and sobbing. And I was probably releasing a lot of that stress and hurt for sure. And I think part of it also was because in adulthood, as I mentioned, I had never experienced someone so callously just telling me to go back to where I came from or an Asian country. I feel like I felt so degraded and unwelcome in a country I was born in and was raised in and had never felt so othered in before. But I'm kind of glad that that happened. I mean, after that happened, and I don't think I've shared that with more than like 2 people in my whole life, because I think I felt embarrassed, which I shouldn't feel. I mean, now I know I shouldn't feel embarrassed, but I think it was something that I sort of wanted to hide and forget about. I feel like that's a moment I'm glad I had now, like kind of like when Spider-Man got bitten. And that was not like an attitudinal change in Spider-Man. I mean, clearly in Spider-Man, there was like an actual venom that happened and he was changed for life. But I think that was a very impactful moment after which I took zero fucking bullshit from anyone else. When it came to anything racist or sexist. I think I needed that moment to be cracked open. And I'm fortunate that it took that long for that to happen. And I totally understand that a lot of other people get discrimination that's way worse, way earlier on in life, whether it's racial or cultural or religious or gender related. But that was my Spider-Man moment that made me give zero fucking fucks when I got discriminated against. And then I became a very loud person who didn't take any shit. And I've scared back a lot of people after that and became really unhinged and kind of scary in those circumstances. But in other words, I would say that that made me feel very emboldened and empowered. And that contributed to who I am now. So good. But that day was a kind of a sad day, and fuck that man. I have no idea where that man is. Probably still wearing a tank top and getting fake tan. There's a lot of people who are like, when people do bad things to them, oh, I wish you well. I don't wish those people well at all. I'm not going to go actively like hurt them or like kill them or anything like that. But it's like, I don't really wish that man well. I'm sure it wasn't his finest moment, and hopefully he never did anything like that before. But again, women are easy targets to people like this. And women of color and Asian women are very easy targets to people because they don't think that we are going to talk back or anything like that. What do I think about this general comment or line that people use? Go back to your own country, go back to China or whatever. It's so fucking weak. What are some good comebacks to when someone tells you go back to China or go back to where you came from? One of them that comes to mind is, oh, I came from my mom's vagina. Go back to my mom's vagina? I can't do that. It's closed for business, you fucking pervert. Or maybe I would just gather myself and be, go back to China. Well, that is very rude. Punch in the face. I would choose violence every fucking time. These people need to understand. They need to learn a fucking lesson. I'm not the first person in the world that would point out that anybody who tells you to leave the country or go back to where you came from also came from somewhere else or has a negative history with the country that they're telling you to go leave and go back to somewhere else. What does the internet say about this? I looked up what ChatGPT might recommend you say to someone who tells you to go back to China or go back to your own country, and I did not like it. Let me walk you through. Every one of these comebacks is way too diplomatic, okay? Here's one. ChatGPT says, directly address the insult. Instead of ignoring the statement, acknowledge it and express that you find it offensive and disrespectful. For example, that's a very hurtful and disrespectful thing to say. I would never just say that and walk away. I would have to make fun of his tank top, which I didn't do. I really regret not making fun of his tank top. Challenge the assumption, question the basis for the statement. I am a citizen here just like you, or I belong here just as much as anyone else. I mean, I guess I could say something like that, but I really would rather choose violence. I feel like if you say something like sane or logical to someone, you can't use logic or empathy with somebody who clearly doesn't have any. They have to learn the hard fucking way. You have to say something like that and slash their tires or punch them in the face. It's the only way they're going to remember. They only do this because they think that you're not going to actually clap back in a way that will actually hurt them. So I think you should start a fucking fight. All right. I find it's mostly ignorant and uneducated people who don't like immigrants, or if they're not feeling good about where they're at in life, or if they're trying to blame their problems on someone, they will blame other people, whether it's women or people of color or whatever. I feel like the next time someone tells me to go back to my country, I'll probably just say, and I mean this is sincere advice, go back to school. Usually the people that say these things are ignorant and they're uneducated. And I'm not saying that you need a formal education to be smart, but these people are neither. They have neither. And I honestly legitimately think it would help you to go back to school and have some critical thinking skills, or get into a structure and institution with people who actually think and are forced to use logic and work hard and not make excuses for your own failures. Yeah, go back to school. Here are some closing thoughts. I don't even think my feelings would get remotely hurt if someone ever said, now go back to your own country or go back to China. China sounds like a wonderful place. They have a lot of money. There's a lot of Asians there in China, and they make a lot of things. It wouldn't be the worst place to go. I also see no actual legitimacy. There is no basis for anybody in any country to tell somebody else to go somewhere else. That's if someone was like, oh, you're ugly, I'd be like, no, I'm not fucking ugly. It wouldn't, that's what I tell my kid to say, there's no basis for somebody even saying this to me. So I don't think my feelings would get hurt at all. I think I needed one good cry a number of years ago when somebody said it, because I wasn't used to it. But now that I've thought about it, it means fucking nothing to me. All that is telling me is that the other person talking is a fucking idiot who doesn't even have a valid thought in their head and says really dumb things that don't make sense. I think it's an easy way to spot somebody who's really stupid and ignorant. And if you are listening and anything like this has happened to you, I'm sorry. I would love to hear from you. Tell me how you dealt with it. Tell me what your feelings are at bothered@juliekimcomedy.com. I'd love to come back to this issue and share some people's experiences and how you deal with these kinds of things. Oh, it is not a nice thing to be excluded. This is the thing. It's like an othering or an exclusion, and that never feels good. Even when you're like 5 years old and your friends don't want to play with you, or like you're not invited to a thing when you're like 35 years old and you don't understand why. It's a matter of exclusion, and it fucking sucks. It's not nice to be hardened and to not give a shit about what people think of you or whatnot. But I think that's exactly what happened to me. And I will say, like, that's life. Life is tough. And maybe that's the way to deal with it. Like for me, I cried it out one time really badly. And then after that, never fucking cried again. It's kind of like, you know, when you have your first breakup or your first couple of breakups, it seems like the worst thing in the world. And then later on, you realize, oh, that was nothing. I could go through this again. And those were losers. Maybe I'm projecting now. This is now getting a tangent, but I did date a lot of losers. But that was because of a lack of self-worth early on due to childhood trauma. I'll get into those things later on. But when anybody fucking tells you to go back to whatever country, China, or go back to where you came from, it's just so fucking invalid. It means nothing. Please know that it's not an actual reflection of you or you not belonging. This other fucking person is a loser and they don't deserve any of your time. So you tell them to get the fuck out of here or punch them in the face right between the eyes if nobody's watching or recording. Okay, that's my solution. End of podcast. Thank you so much. Again, I want to hear from you. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Bothered. I have a bunch of dates coming up, not released yet. I hope you will just stay tuned. JulieKimComedy.com. You can sign up for the newsletter. We are a video podcast, as I mentioned, and I want to hear from you. Bothered@JulieKimComedy.com. We are soon going to have a few episodes with some guests, and I will update you on that soon. For now, be well and stay bothered.
Like this, I might lose it. Living like this, I might lose it.